My sister's accident wasn't an accident, and I have proof.
It's been over a year since my sister died, and I still can't bring myself to say the word accident without feeling sick. Everyone else seems to have moved on. The police closed the case, my parents tried to put her things away, even her boyfriend, who once cried so hard at her funeral that his shoulders shook, has a new girlfriend now. But I can't let it go, because the more I replay that night, the more the details don't fit together. And I've learned that when something doesn't fit, it's usually because someone forced it to. Her name was Emily, 2 years younger than me, but always the stronger one. Where I hesitated, she acted. She had that reckless, bright energy that people either loved or envied. She wasn't perfect. She could be sharp, impulsive, too trusting sometimes, but she was alive in a way that made everyone around her feel like they'd been half asleep before she walked in. I used to joke that she lived like she had a deadline. I didn't realize how true that would turn out to be. The night she died, the story was simple. Or at least it was supposed to be. A single-car accident on a wet road. Lost control around a bend, slammed into a guardrail, car caught fire. No skid marks, no witnesses. It was raining hard, and the report said she was likely driving too fast. Probably distracted, the officer told us kindly, as if that made it easier. They found her phone on the passenger seat, unlocked, a half-written message to someone named R. They said maybe she'd been texting. I didn't question it right away. I was too numb. The world felt like it had been hollowed out. But after the funeral, after the condolences stopped coming and the silence settled in, I started to think about the things that didn't add up. For one, Emily hated driving in the rain. She'd cancel plans over drizzle, even when she had somewhere important to be. And that road, the one where it happened, was miles out of her way. She had no reason to be there. A week after the funeral, I went to clean out her apartment. Mom couldn't face it, so I did it alone. Her place was small, but cozy, full of plants she somehow kept alive and Polaroids of nights I didn't remember. Everything smelled faintly of vanilla candles and her shampoo. I thought it would break me, but instead I felt uneasy, like I was being watched. Maybe it was the quiet. Or maybe it was that her things were too neat. Emily was messy by nature, her desk always buried in papers, clothes spilling out of her closet. But this time, everything was lined up perfectly, like someone had gone through it before me. Her laptop was still on her desk, lid closed, charger coiled neatly beside it. I opened it, half hoping for nothing, half hoping for answers. Her wallpaper was a photo of her and her boyfriend, Ryan. They looked happy, her in a sundress, him with his arms slung lazily over her shoulder. But when I clicked through her files, something caught my eye. A folder on her desktop titled Journal. Emily wasn't the journaling type. She used to laugh at me for keeping one. I opened it and found a string of text documents, each dated, one for almost every day over the past 6 months. The last entry was from the night before she died. It started normally, with her rambling about work and a fight she had with Mom, but halfway through, her tone changed. I can't do this anymore. He's not who I thought he was. If something happens to me, it's not an accident. I read that line over and over until the words blurred. I didn't know who he was. She mentioned no names, no details. But there was only one person she'd been close to lately, Ryan. I wanted to tell someone, but what would I say? That my sister left a vague sentence that sounded like a threat? That the police had to reopen a closed case because I was paranoid? I needed more than words in a file. I needed proof. So I started to watch Ryan. At first, just online. His social media looked normal. A few old photos of them together, then a lot of gym selfies, nights out, nothing suspicious. But then one day, I noticed something strange. He posted a picture of himself hiking. The caption read, "Getting some peace, finally." The date was 2 days after Emily's funeral. In the background, just behind his shoulder, I could see a woman's reflection in the car window. Not clear, but familiar. Blonde hair, the same shade as Emily's best friend, Claire. Claire had been quiet since the accident. She showed up to the funeral, said all the right things, cried just enough, but seeing that reflection, it made something twist in my chest. Emily used to tell me that Claire and Ryan didn't get along, that they tolerated each other for her sake. I didn't say anything to anyone, but I started to keep notes, times, dates, what I saw. I didn't trust my memory anymore. Then, one night, I drove past Ryan's apartment after work. His car wasn't there, but Claire's was. Same dent on the bumper, same sticker on the rear window. I parked down the block and waited, heart pounding. Around midnight, they came out together, laughing. He kissed her before she got into her car. I felt my stomach drop. That's when I realized Emily might have known about them, and maybe she confronted them. But that still didn't explain how she ended up dead on a road she never drove, in a car that somehow caught fire before anyone could reach her. The next day, I went to the impound lot. I told the clerk I was there to collect personal items from my sister's vehicle. He gave me a sympathetic look and handed me a clipboard. When I saw the car, I almost turned back. The front end was crushed, metal twisted and blackened. The inside smelled of burnt plastic and gasoline. But I forced myself closer. On the passenger floor, I found something the police must have missed. A silver necklace, half melted, chain broken. Emily never took it off. I put it in my pocket, shaking. Then, under the seat, I saw something else. A small black flash drive. It was scorched on one edge, but intact. I slipped it into my jacket before anyone saw. That night, when I plugged it into my laptop, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely type. There was only one file on it, a video labeled R. When I opened it, the screen went black for a second, then flickered. The camera angle was shaky, handheld. Emily's voice came through first. "If you're seeing this, something happened to me. I don't know how to say this, but I'm scared. And I think Ryan is involved in something bad. He's been lying to me. I found things on his computer, messages, photos, money transfers. He says it's nothing, but I know what I saw. He told me if I talk, he'll make sure I regret it. Please." The video cut off. Abruptly. Static. Then nothing. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the frozen frame of her face, eyes wide, mouth mid-sentence. That was the moment I stopped grieving and started investigating.
I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying her voice in my head. The fear, the way it cracked halfway through her sentence. Emily wasn't the kind of person who scared easily. If she said she was afraid, something was seriously wrong. By dawn, I'd already made 3 copies of the flash drive and hidden them in different places. One at home, one in my car, one in my locker at work. I didn't know who I was protecting myself from, but I knew better than to underestimate people who had already silenced her. The next morning, I went to the police station with every intention of turning in the drive. But as I sat in the parking lot, I started to imagine the headlines. Grieving brother fabricates evidence. Accident victim sibling obsessed with conspiracy. I'd seen how fast they closed her case the first time. They wouldn't reopen it unless I handed them something irrefutable. And even then, if Ryan had any connections, and based on what Emily hinted, he might, I couldn't risk him finding out before I was ready. So instead, I started digging on my own. Ryan worked in real estate. He managed a few rental properties around town, mostly for wealthy clients. I remembered Emily mentioning how he sometimes carried envelopes of cash, saying his clients preferred it that way. I used to think it was just shady business practices, but now it sounded worse. Money transfers, she'd said. Maybe laundering? Maybe blackmail? I didn't know yet. I decided to start with his company. According to their website, it was a small firm, only 5 employees. But when I checked the state business registry, I found something odd. The firm had been registered only 2 years ago, right around the time Ryan and Emily started dating, and the address listed for the company's headquarters wasn't an office building. It was an old warehouse on the edge of town. That night, I drove there. The building looked abandoned, windows dark, weeds pushing through cracks in the asphalt. But when I parked nearby and watched, I noticed a faint light flicker inside around midnight. Not a steady glow, more like a motion sensor turning on and off. Someone was there. I didn't go in. I wasn't stupid. But I took pictures. The sign, the door, the number plate of a silver SUV parked out front. When I looked up the plate later, it belonged to a company van registered under a completely different name. The next day, I called Claire. I hadn't spoken to her since the funeral. My voice shook when I told her I'd found some of Emily's things and wanted to give them back in person. She hesitated before agreeing to meet at a coffee shop. When she walked in, she looked different. Thinner, pale, eyes darting. I had expected guilt or sadness, but what I saw instead was fear. "Hey," she said softly, sitting down. "It's been a while." "Yeah," I said. "Listen, Claire, I found some files on Emily's computer, stuff she wrote before she died." Her hand froze halfway to her cup. "What kind of stuff?" She mentioned being scared, that someone was threatening her. I watched her closely. "Do you know who she was talking about?" She blinked fast, then shook her head. "No. Emily was stressed about work, I think. She overreacted sometimes." It was a lie. I could hear it in the way her voice trembled on work. "Did she ever tell you about Ryan?" I pressed. She looked away. "They fought a lot, but everyone fights." "Did you know they were still together?" "Of course," she said almost too quickly. I leaned in. "Then why were you at his apartment last week?" Her face went white. What?" "Don't bother lying. I saw you." For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she swallowed hard and whispered, "You shouldn't be looking into this." "Why not?" "Because you don't know what you're getting into," she said, eyes wide, almost pleading. "Just let it go, please." "Did he hurt her, Claire?" She opened her mouth, but before she could answer, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, went pale, and stood up. "I have to go." "Who was that?" I asked, but she didn't answer. She grabbed her bag and rushed out the door. I sat there, heart pounding, her untouched coffee growing cold. That night, I got a message from an unknown number. Just one line. "Stop asking questions if you care about your family." No name, no number I recognized. I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned off my phone and unplugged the router. The next day, I called in sick and drove to see my parents. I didn't tell them about the message, but I needed to see them to make sure they were okay. Mom was in the garden, trying to act normal, but I could tell she was still broken. Dad barely talked anymore. He sat in his chair by the window, staring out at nothing. I asked Mom about the night Emily died. She said the police came around 3 a.m., said there'd been an accident an hour earlier. Emily's phone was found unlocked, half a message typed out. "They think she was texting," Mom said again. But I remembered something else. Emily's car had voice control. She used to brag that she could text hands-free. Why would she be typing manually in the rain? When I left that evening, I drove to the stretch of road where she crashed. It was still scarred. Black streaks on the guardrail, wilted flowers taped to a post. I stood there for a while, trying to imagine her last moments. Then I noticed something. A small section of the guardrail was newly replaced, fresh metal, lighter color. The section right before the curve. I walked closer and found a faint mark on the asphalt, like rubber, but not from tires. It looked like oil, or maybe something spilled deliberately. I took a picture. When I got back to my car, I noticed a black SUV parked about 50 meters down the road. Same model as the one from the warehouse. It started its engine when I did. And when I turned right, it turned right too. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a coincidence. But every turn I took, it followed. After 15 minutes of weaving through side streets, I pulled into a crowded gas station, parked near the door, and waited. The SUV slowed at the entrance, then kept going. My hands were shaking as I filled the tank. They knew I was looking. But if they thought that would stop me, they didn't know me very well. That night, I opened the video again. I slowed it down, frame by frame, until I noticed something I'd missed before. A reflection behind Emily. Faint, but clear enough, a window. And outside it, parked in the dark, was a car. A silver SUV. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. My head was spinning, my stomach felt like it had turned to stone. I kept seeing that silver SUV, the same one that had been at the warehouse, the same one following me, the same one in Emily's video. Coincidences don't repeat themselves 3 times. That was deliberate. Someone had been watching her before she died, just like someone was watching me now. I made another copy of the video and uploaded it to a cloud drive under a fake name. If they wanted to scare me, fine, but if anything happened to me, I wanted someone to find it. Then I started thinking about how Emily must have felt, realizing too late that she was in danger, that the person she loved might have been behind it. The idea of her sitting in that car, recording that message, alone and terrified, it made my throat close up. I needed to know what she'd found on Ryan's computer. She said there were messages, photos, money transfers. If any of that still existed, it would prove everything. But breaking into his laptop wasn't exactly an option, not without a reason. I needed to get close to him somehow, or at least into his place. That's when I remembered Claire. She'd slipped once already. She knew more than she was saying, and maybe she'd reached her breaking point. I texted her that night, "I'm not trying to blame anyone. I just want to understand what happened to Emily. Please." No reply for hours. I went to bed with my phone in my hand. At 2:47 a.m. it buzzed. "Meet me tomorrow at the old pier. Noon. Come alone." I stared at the message. No greeting, no signature, but it had to be her. The pier was about 20 minutes from town, half abandoned now, mostly used by fishermen. When I got there, she was already waiting. Hood up, sunglasses on, fidgeting with her hands. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Thanks for coming," I said carefully. She didn't look up. "You shouldn't have called me." "Then why are you here?" "Because I can't do this anymore." Her voice cracked. "I thought it would stop after she died, but it hasn't." "What hasn't?" "Ryan. He's not who you think he is." I felt my pulse in my throat. "Then who is he?" She looked around, making sure no one was near us. "He was doing something with money, not just real estate stuff, like helping people move money offshore. He called it a consulting service, but it's criminal. He started using Emily's name on documents, fake signatures, fake accounts. She found out, confronted him, and he panicked." My mouth dried. "Panicked enough to kill her?" Claire nodded slowly. "She said she was going to the police. The night before it happened, she told me she had proof. She was scared, but she thought she could fix it." She took a shaky breath. "He came to see me after. Told me to keep my mouth shut, said it was an accident, and if I said otherwise, he'd ruin me." I was trying to stay calm, but my hands were trembling. "Did you tell the police any of this?" She gave a bitter laugh. "Who do you think helped him get rid of the files? He made me do it. He said he'd show them texts between us, make it look like I helped him." "Did you?" Tears filled her eyes. "No, but he can make anything look real." "Where are those files now?" "I don't know. He moved them. He keeps everything on an external drive. It's small, silver, always on his desk. I saw him using it last week." I swallowed hard. "Then I'll find it." She looked horrified. "You can't go near him. He's dangerous." "Then help me stop him." She shook her head. "If I help you, I'm dead." She started to walk away but then turned back, eyes full of guilt. "Be careful, okay? He's watching you too." And then she was gone. I stood there staring at the waves, heart hammering, trying to process everything. Emily had found evidence that Ryan was laundering money under her name. She confronted him, and hours later she was dead. Claire confirmed it, and she was terrified. That meant Ryan still had something to hide. That night, I parked a few blocks away from his apartment. The lights were on inside. I could see him through the window, pacing, talking on the phone, holding a drink, the same easy charm he always had. Then he picked something up from the table, a small, silver device, and tucked it into a drawer. The hard drive. I waited until midnight. The lights went off. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but I didn't care. I broke in. The lock was surprisingly easy. He'd never expect someone like me to do this. Inside, everything smelled like expensive cologne and whiskey. I moved quickly, avoiding the windows. The drawer was in his office, just like I saw. I opened it. Empty.
Panic surged through me. Then I noticed his laptop still on the desk, a faint glow under the lid. I opened it, password protected, of course. I tried Emily, then his birthday, nothing. I remembered how Emily used to tease him about using predictable passwords. Maybe his cat's name? I typed Milo1989. Unlocked. My heart nearly exploded. Inside, I found a folder called Clients. Dozens of files, spreadsheets, emails, contracts, some with Emily's name listed as the account handler. Fake documents, signatures that looked eerily like hers, and buried inside one subfolder a PDF titled insuranceclaim.pdf. I opened it. It was an insurance policy under Emily's name. A life insurance payout of $500,000 with Ryan listed as the sole beneficiary, signed 2 months before her death. I barely had time to breathe before I heard the sound of a key in the lock. He was home. I froze, laptop still open, every muscle in my body screaming. The door creaked. Footsteps echoed. "Hello?" he called out, voice calm, almost lazy. "Who's there?" I shut the laptop, killed the lights, and ducked behind the desk. My heart pounded so hard I thought he'd hear it. He walked in, the glow from his phone lighting up the room. I saw his shadow move closer, then pause. And then he laughed, softly. "I know you're here," he said. I held my breath, clutching the flash drive I'd just pulled from the laptop's port. Then I ran. Out the back door, across the yard, through the fence. I didn't stop until I was blocks away. When I finally reached my car shaking, I looked down at what I was holding, the silver hard drive. I didn't even realize I'd taken it. It was warm in my hand, like it was alive.
I didn't go home right away. I drove aimlessly through the city until the shaking in my hand subsided enough to hold the wheel steady. Every set of headlights behind me made my pulse spike. I didn't know if Ryan had seen my face, but I couldn't risk leading him to where I lived, so I parked in an empty lot behind an all-night diner and sat there until the sky began to lighten. The hard drive sat in the passenger seat like a loaded gun. When the sun finally came up, I went inside, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and opened my laptop. I plugged the drive in. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then a folder popped up. Encrypted, of course. I tried to open it, but it demanded a password. I stared at the screen, frustrated, exhausted. Then I noticed a small file outside the folder named backup.txt. Inside, a single line. Same password as before. Don't forget this time. Same as before. That could mean the same one as his laptop, which I'd already cracked. I typed in Milo1989. It worked. The folder opened. Inside were dozens of files, PDFs, screenshots, text logs. It took me a few minutes to understand what I was looking at. Bank transfers, crypto transactions, property deeds, fake names, and Emily's signature on almost every document. He'd used her identity for everything. And some of the transfers went to accounts labeled only by initials, RC, DL, S. Whoever these people were, they weren't clients. They were accomplices. At the bottom of the list was a document dated the day before she died, transferproof.pdf. I opened it. It was a contract showing $1.2 million moved through an offshore account in her name, and then a note in the corner, handwritten and scanned. "She's starting to ask questions. Handle it." My blood ran cold. That was it. Proof. Proof that someone ordered her silenced. But I couldn't take this to the police, not yet. If Ryan really was connected to criminal networks, they could have people everywhere. I needed someone who couldn't be bought. Someone outside. So I reached out to the only person I could think of, an old college friend, Mark, who worked as a freelance journalist. We hadn't talked in years, but when I called and told him it was about Emily, he agreed to meet immediately. We met in his office that afternoon. The place looked like a fire hazard. Stacks of papers, coffee cups, cables everywhere. But Mark was sharp. He always had been. He listened quietly while I explained everything, occasionally jotting notes. When I showed him the files, he whistled under his breath. "Jesus," he said finally. "This is serious, man. If this is real, it's not just fraud, it's murder." "It's real," I said. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin. "I can run some of these names through my contacts, see if anyone recognizes them. But if this goes public before we're ready, you could be in danger." "I already am," I said flatly.
He nodded slowly. Then we do this carefully. I'll start digging tonight. Before I left, he handed me a burner phone. If anything happens, call me on this. Don't use your own. I drove home that night with a mix of relief and dread. I wasn't alone anymore, but that also meant someone else was now in the line of fire. When I got back to my apartment, my front door was unlocked. I froze. I was sure I'd locked it that morning. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and slowly pushed the door open. Everything looked normal until I reached the living room. The place had been searched. Drawers open, cushions tossed aside, papers scattered. Whoever did it had been careful, though. Nothing broken, nothing obviously stolen, just examined. I rushed to my bedroom, checked under the bed. The copy of the flash drive was gone. That meant they'd been here, and they knew exactly what they were looking for. I called Mark immediately. "Someone broke into my place," I whispered. "Get out. Don't stay there tonight. I'll find you a motel. Pay in cash." I did what he said. I packed a small bag and drove to a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. The receptionist didn't even look up as I checked in. I kept the hard drive with me, wrapped in a shirt, and hid it under the mattress. Sleep didn't come. Every sound made me flinch. Footsteps in the hall, doors closing, cars outside. Around 3 a.m., my burner phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. "Found something. Need to talk. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I exhaled shakily, finally letting myself relax a little. But when I showed up at his office that next morning, the door was open, and police tape fluttered in the breeze. 2 officers stood outside. One of them stopped me as I approached. "Sorry, sir, this area is closed." "What happened?" I asked. The officer looked at me blankly. "There was a break-in last night. The man who worked here, Mark Jennings, was found inside. He didn't make it." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. My mind refused to process the words. "What? How?" "Still under investigation," he said. "Do you know him?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I shook my head and walked away before they could ask more. By the time I reached my car, I could barely breathe. Mark was dead, less than 12 hours after he'd agreed to help me. That wasn't a coincidence. I sat there for a long time, shaking, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Whoever was behind this wasn't just dangerous, they were untouchable. And now, they knew I had proof. When I finally started the engine, there was a folded piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. No words, just a photo. It was me, standing outside Ryan's apartment the night I broke in. Taken from across the street.
I didn't remember driving back to the motel. I must have done it on autopilot, because one moment I was gripping the photo in my trembling hands, and the next I was sitting on the edge of the bed staring at the stained carpet, my pulse hammering in my ears. The photo wasn't grainy or far away. It was clear, sharp, professional. Someone had been watching me from the moment I got there, someone close enough to see my face. I wanted to call the police, to tell them everything, but what would I even say? "Hi, I broke into a suspect's apartment and now I'm being followed by whoever killed my sister?" They'd think I'd lost my mind, or worse, they'd call Ryan. I didn't trust anyone anymore. Not after Mark. Not after what they did to him. So I did what I always did when I couldn't think straight. I went through Emily's things again. I had a box I'd taken from her apartment, still sealed in my trunk. Inside were her notebooks, some photos, her wallet, a few receipts. I spread everything out on the motel bed and started looking for something, anything I'd missed. Most of it was normal, meaningless clutter. But one thing caught my eye. A small receipt from a gas station near the industrial park. The date was the night she died. Time? 10:14 p.m., about an hour before the crash. She'd bought gas, a bottle of water, and a prepaid SIM card. A SIM card? That didn't make sense. Emily already had a phone. Why would she buy another one? I felt a jolt of adrenaline. If she had a second phone, it might still be out there, and it might explain everything. The gas station was about 20 minutes away. I drove there as the sun was setting, the world tinted orange and gray. The clerk behind the counter was a tired-looking guy in his 50s with a name tag that said Ray. "Hey," I said carefully, showing him the receipt.
My sister was here a while back. Do you remember her? He squinted at the paper. That was a while ago, man. I know, but please, blonde hair, about this tall, drove a blue Honda Civic? Something flickered in his expression. Yeah, maybe. She looked upset, I think. Bought a SIM, asked me if I knew where the nearest payphone was. I told her there aren't any anymore. Did she talk to anyone? He frowned, thinking. There was a guy outside. Big, dark jacket, SUV. She saw him and looked scared. Dropped her water. Then she just got in her car and left. Do you have cameras here? Yeah, but they overwrite every month. Please, I said. Just check, please. He sighed, disappearing into the back. After a few minutes, he returned with a USB stick. Lucky for you, our tech guy's lazy. Footage is still on the old system. You didn't get this from me. I gave him everything I had in my wallet. Back in the car, I plugged the USB into my laptop. The footage was grainy but clear enough. 10:14 p.m., Emily at the counter, nervous, glancing over her shoulder. She looks outside. The camera catches a dark shape reflected in the glass. A man near an SUV. He turns slightly toward the camera just as she leaves. It was Ryan. I felt the air leave my lungs. He'd followed her that night. He was there. I hit pause, staring at his face. The timestamp proved it. He'd been at the gas station at 10:14 p.m., yet he told the police he was home all night. It was over. I had proof. But before I could even think about what to do next, my burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. You're getting close. Turn around. I looked instinctively. There was a car parked across the street from the motel. Black SUV, engine running. My chest tightened. I started the car, slammed it into gear, and tore out of the lot. The SUV followed instantly. I sped through side streets, my heart pounding, trying to lose it in traffic. But every time I turned, they turned. I cut across 2 lanes, nearly clipping a truck, and dove into a narrow alley. The SUV skidded at the entrance, tires screeching. I floored it, bursting out the other side and into a residential area. Then I killed the lights and parked behind a dumpster, holding my breath. The SUV roared past a few seconds later. I waited another minute, then another, before stepping out. The night was silent except for the distant hum of the highway. I could still taste metal in my mouth. I called Claire. She didn't pick up. I called again. Voicemail. Claire, it's me. I have proof Ryan was with Emily before she died. Call me back, please. I hung up and stared at my phone. The signal flickered, then cut out completely. No service. I was standing in the middle of nowhere, holding evidence that could destroy a man who had already killed twice. I drove until I found a 24-hour diner off the highway and parked there for the night. My mind was racing. I couldn't go home, couldn't go to the cops, couldn't trust anyone. At dawn, I decided to check on my parents again. If they knew I was digging this deep, they might be next. When I got there, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, pale and shaking. There was an envelope in front of her. Mom? She looked up slowly. Her hands were trembling. This came for you, she whispered. The envelope was unmarked, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It was Claire. Lying on the ground, eyes open, expression frozen. Dead. For a long time, I just stared at the photograph. My brain refused to connect the image with reality. Claire was alive yesterday. She'd been terrified, yes, but breathing, speaking, walking. Now she was lying on cold asphalt somewhere, her hair matted with blood, her eyes empty. I wanted to believe it was fake, some kind of sick threat, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Ryan was cleaning up loose ends. Mom's voice snapped me back. What is it? I couldn't let her see. I folded the photo and slid it into my pocket. Nothing, junk mail. She didn't believe me, but she didn't ask again. Her hands were shaking too much to hold her cup. I realized suddenly how much danger she was in just by being related to me. If they knew where I lived, if they'd been in my apartment, they could find her easily. Mom, I said softly, I need you and Dad to stay somewhere else for a while. Why? Please, just do it. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded, too tired to argue. Okay. I helped her pack a few things and took them to a motel 2 towns over. I paid in cash, told them not to answer the door for anyone. When I left, I sat in the car for 10 minutes trying to breathe. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire's face. Back in my own motel room, I opened my laptop again and looked through the files on Ryan's drive. I had everything. Bank transfers, the fake insurance policy, the gas station footage. It was enough to ruin him, maybe even put him in prison. But I needed someone alive to help me expose it. Mark was gone. Claire was gone. So I turned to the last person I could think of, Detective Harris. He'd been the officer who handled Emily's case originally. He wasn't friendly, but he was competent. If anyone could be convinced by evidence, it was him. I found his number online and called. He answered on the 3rd ring. Detective Harris. "It's about Emily Dawson," I said quickly. "You handled her case last year." Pause. "Yes, I remember. Who's this?" "Her brother. I need to meet you. It's urgent." He hesitated. "The case is closed, Mr. Dawson. I'm not sure—" I interrupted. "I have proof it wasn't an accident. Please, just hear me out." Another pause. Then, "Where?" We agreed to meet at a small diner off Route 47, neutral ground, public. When I got there, he was already sitting in a corner booth, drinking black coffee. He looked exactly the same. Square jaw, calm eyes, uniform creased with military precision. I slid the flash drive across the table. "It's all on there. My sister found out her boyfriend was laundering money under her name. She was going to the police. He followed her the night she died. And I think he killed 2 more people since then." He didn't touch the drive immediately. "That's a serious accusation." "I know. Just look." He plugged it into his tablet and scrolled silently. I watched his expression shift, from skepticism to focus, then to something else. Fear, maybe. After a few minutes, he exhaled slowly. "Where did you get this?" "From Ryan's apartment." He looked up sharply. "You broke in?" "I had to." He rubbed a hand over his face. "Jesus, Dawson, you realize if any of this is true, you're in deep." "I know," I said. "That's why I need your help." "All right, leave this with me. I'll run it through the department quietly. If there's anything real here, I'll find it." "Quietly," I repeated. "You can't tell anyone yet." "I understand." He stood, shook my hand firmly, and left. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of relief. Maybe it was over. Maybe someone finally believed me. That night, I drove back to the motel, exhausted but hopeful. I actually slept for a few hours. When I woke up, there was a voicemail on my phone. Harris's voice. "It's me. You were right. The files check out, but you need to get out of town now. They know you gave me the drive." My blood turned to ice. I called back immediately. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then I turned on the news. Local detective found dead in apparent car accident. The photo flashed on screen. Harris's car crushed against a guardrail, flames licking through twisted metal. The same road where Emily had died. I threw the remote at the wall. It wasn't an accident. None of it was. They'd killed her, then Mark, then Claire, now Harris. And I was next. I packed everything I had, the laptop, the flash drives, the USB from the gas station, and left the motel before sunrise. I drove with no destination, just away. My phone stayed off, every car in the mirror felt like a threat, every shadow looked like a watcher. By the time I stopped, I was 3 states away, parked behind a truck stop. I sat there until the sun came up, numb, empty, but alive. That's when I saw the envelope taped to my windshield. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You can't hide forever, but you can still walk away. Drop everything. Go home. Forget her. Or the next photo we send won't be a memory." There was another photo folded beneath it. My parents, sitting in their motel room.
I don't remember the drive back. My body was moving, steering, checking mirrors, but my mind was somewhere else, stuck on that picture of my parents. It had been taken through the motel window, like someone had been standing outside in the dark, waiting. I kept seeing my mother's small, hunched frame and my father's hand resting on hers, oblivious to the danger. I'd promised I'd keep them safe, and now they were in the crosshairs because of me. I parked a few blocks away from the motel and approached on foot, cutting through the back lot. The curtains were still drawn, no movement inside. My pulse hammered as I knocked, once, softly. "Mom? It's me." Nothing. I knocked again, harder. "Mom!" Finally, I heard shuffling inside. The door opened a crack, the security chain still on. Her eyes were wide, frightened. "Why are you here? You said not to open the door." I know, I said quickly. "Pack your things, we're leaving right now." "Why?" "They found you." She gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Within minutes we were in the car. Dad didn't ask questions, he just held Mom's hand and stared straight ahead. I drove for hours, avoiding highways, cutting through back roads until we reached a small cabin my family used to rent when I was a kid. It was deep in the woods, no neighbors, no reception. I figured that made it safe, or at least safer. I helped them settle in, made sure the doors were locked, then stepped outside to think. My hands were still shaking. There was nowhere left to run. I'd gone from a grieving brother to a fugitive in less than a week. Everyone who tried to help me was dead, and the people behind this were still watching. But they'd made a mistake, sending that photo. They wanted me scared, desperate. Instead, they gave me proof that they were still tracking me, still active. And if they were watching, they could be traced. I turned my phone on for the first time in days and checked the voicemail again from Detective Harris. I played it over and over, focusing on the background noise, a faint rhythmic clicking. I knew that sound. It was the old pedestrian signal from the intersection near his office. That meant the call came from within a few hundred feet of where he died. So they'd killed him immediately after he contacted me. But what if he hadn't been alone? What if someone else had seen something? The idea lit a spark in me. I packed a small bag, left the hard drive hidden under a loose floorboard in the cabin, and told my parents not to open the door for anyone. Then I headed back toward the city. By the time I got there, the crash site had been cleared, just a black stain on the guardrail. But the nearby convenience store still had an old security camera pointed at the road. I went inside, bought a bottle of water, and casually asked the clerk, "Hey, does that camera actually work?" He shrugged. "Sometimes. Depends if the boss remembered to clear the card." "Can I buy the footage from last week? Just curious. My sister had an accident out there." He gave me a long look, then took the cash. Back in my car, I loaded the card onto my laptop. The footage was low quality, but around the time Harris's car crashed, I saw it. Headlights swerving, sparks flying. Then, a few seconds later, another vehicle passing by slowly. Not a police cruiser, not an ambulance. A silver SUV. Ryan's. It stopped for about 30 seconds, just out of frame, then drove off before emergency lights appeared. He'd been there again. That was all the confirmation I needed. I still didn't know how many people were working with him, but he was the center of it. And if he thought I'd back down, he didn't know what losing Emily had turned me into. I drove straight to his house, parked down the block and waited. His car wasn't there. The lights were off. I forced myself to breathe slowly, evenly, as I picked the lock again. This time I didn't hesitate. I went straight for his office. The drawer I'd found empty before was now full. Papers, receipts, a passport. But what caught my eye was the envelope on the desk. My name written in neat, deliberate handwriting. I opened it carefully. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "Since you like digging, let's see what you do with this. R." I plugged it into the laptop. Only one file. A video. It showed Emily, sitting on a couch, tear-streaked, terrified. Ryan's voice behind the camera. "You know you messed up, right?" She nodded, trembling. "You weren't supposed to look through my stuff. You weren't supposed to talk to anyone. Now you've left me no choice." She whispered, "Please, Ryan." The screen went black. Then a flash of headlights, a car door slamming, tires screeching, and silence. I sat frozen, every muscle locked. It was him. He'd recorded it. He'd filmed her just before the crash. I copied the file to my laptop, then took the USB and slipped it into my pocket. My vision was blurring with rage. I didn't hear the footsteps behind me until it was too late. The sharp click of a safety being released. "Put the laptop down," a voice said, calm, cold. I turned slowly. Ryan stood in the doorway, a gun in his hand, the same easy smirk on his face. "I was wondering when you'd come back. You really should have listened." I swallowed hard. "You killed her." He smiled faintly. "She couldn't keep her mouth shut. Neither could your friend, or the detective, or Claire. You see the pattern?" My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. "You don't have to do this," I said quietly. "Don't I? You broke into my home, stole my property, sent my files to people you shouldn't have. You've made a mess." He stepped closer. "But I'll clean it up." He raised the gun. That's when I swung the laptop. It hit his arm hard enough for the gun to go off, deafening inside the room. I dove for cover behind the desk as a second shot cracked through the wall. I grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy paperweight, and hurled it. It smashed into his shoulder. He cursed, stumbled. I ran. Out the back door, across the yard, through the trees. I didn't stop until I couldn't hear his footsteps anymore. My lungs burned. My ears rang from the shots. When I finally looked back, I realized something that made my blood run cold. The hard drive, the one with all the evidence, was still in his house.
I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing behind a row of dumpsters in some empty industrial lot. My chest felt like it was tearing open with each breath. I kept waiting to hear footsteps, tires, anything, but the night stayed silent except for the low hum of distant traffic. I pressed my back against the cold metal, trying to stop shaking. My clothes were torn, my hands scraped and bleeding, but I was alive, somehow. When I finally got control of my breathing, I checked my pockets. The USB with the video of Emily, it was still there. I clutched it like a lifeline, but the hard drive, the one that tied everything together, was gone. Sitting in Ryan's office, surrounded by blood, lies, and money. I had one shot left, that video, the proof of her voice, his confession. But I couldn't just upload it. If he had people watching the web for mentions, they'd trace it back in seconds. I needed to think. I found a payphone near the highway, a filthy relic that somehow still worked, and called the only number I trusted. A contact Mark had once given me, a journalist named Linda who freelanced for an independent investigative outlet. He'd said she was one of the few who still cared about truth more than clicks. She answered on the second ring. "Yeah? Mark Jennings gave me your number," I said. My voice sounded distant even to me. Silence. "Mark's dead." "I know. He died because of what he was helping me with. I have proof of who did it and why. But I need your help." Another pause, then cautiously, "Where are you?" I hesitated. "Not safe, but I can meet you." We agreed on a diner off the interstate. Neutral ground again, public enough to make a shootout unlikely, at least, I hoped. When I got there, she was already inside. Mid-40s, tired eyes, sharp voice. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "Show me." I handed her the USB. We went to a booth in the corner. She watched the video in silence. When it ended, she looked up slowly. "He filmed this?" "Yes." "And you have the rest of the evidence?" "Not anymore. He has it, but I know where." She leaned back, thinking fast. "Then we can still make this work. If I can get this video verified, I can publish it. Once it's out, he can't touch you without confirming it's real." I shook my head. "You don't understand. Everyone who's helped me is dead." She gave a small, grim smile. "I've been threatened before. It's part of the job. I'll make copies, send them to my editor, and keep one off-site. They can't kill a story that's already alive." It was the first time in weeks that I felt a flicker of hope. We spent the next few hours planning. I told her everything.
About the hard drive, the files, the SUV, the threats. She wrote furiously, her eyes darting between notes and screens. Around 3 a.m., she closed the laptop. We'll need something stronger to back this video. Dates, transactions, witness accounts. If I can tie any of this to public records, it'll stick. I nodded. He keeps the main drive in his office. I saw it. If I can get it, will that be enough? It'll be more than enough. But you won't get a second chance if he catches you again. I know. Before I left, she handed me a new phone. If anything happens, text me one word, publish. I'll release it all immediately. I didn't ask how she'd get it done. I just pocketed the phone and drove off, mind racing. When I finally reached Ryan's neighborhood again, it was just before dawn. The street was quiet, windows dark. I parked at the edge of the block and waited. Around 6, a silver SUV rolled past. His. He didn't see me. I followed at a distance as he drove toward the highway, then turned north, probably heading to his office or the warehouse. I doubled back to his house. The back door was still damaged from my escape. I slipped inside, heart pounding, every nerve screaming. This place smelled faintly of gunpowder and whiskey. Sunlight crept through the blinds, slicing across the mess I'd left behind. The office was empty, the drawer still open, but the hard drive was gone. I searched everywhere, under furniture, inside vents, behind books, nothing. Then I noticed something strange, a faint dark streak on the carpet leading from the office to the basement door. I followed it. The basement was cold, concrete walls lined with metal shelves. It looked like storage, boxes, old furniture, nothing unusual, until I saw the workbench at the back. A single desk lamp lit up a half-open laptop and several neatly stacked envelopes. Next to it sat the hard drive. And next to that, Emily's necklace. The one I'd found melted in her car. My breath caught. I reached out, fingers trembling, and realized it wasn't melted. It was perfect, untouched, which meant the one in the car had been planted. It was all staged, every detail of that crash. I grabbed the drive and shoved it into my backpack. As I turned to leave, something glinted under the workbench. A camera lens. Small, red light blinking. Recording. My stomach dropped. I pulled the plug, grabbed the memory card, and bolted up the stairs. But as soon as I reached the living room, I heard the unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. He was back. I ran to the back door, slipped out into the yard, and crouched behind the fence just as the SUV stopped in the driveway. The engine cut. The driver's door opened. I could hear him whistling. He walked up the steps, humming softly, keys jingling. I waited until I heard the door close, then sprinted for my car. My pulse was roaring in my ears. I peeled out of the neighborhood, eyes flicking between the road and the mirror, half expecting headlights to appear. When I finally reached the highway, I called Linda. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. Then I saw the text come through. They found me. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No more messages. I slammed my hand on the wheel and screamed. She was my last chance. I looked down at the passenger seat. The hard drive, the necklace, the camera, everything was there. The story, the proof, all of it. But now I was alone again. And if Ryan knew I'd been in his house, he wouldn't stop until he finished what he started. So I decided to end it first.
I didn't stop driving until dawn started bleeding through the clouds, the kind of weak light that makes everything look colder. I didn't have a plan, just the hard drive on the passenger seat and a head full of noise. Every instinct told me to keep running, but there was nowhere left to go that Ryan couldn't eventually find. He had money, people, connections. He'd erased 4 lives without leaving a trace. If I wanted to survive, I had to flip the script. I pulled into an empty rest area and killed the engine. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold my phone. I still had the one Linda had given me. I typed one word, publish, and stared at it, my thumb hovering over send. But if she was dead, if they had her phone, I'd be sending them my location. I deleted the message. I couldn't take that chance. I needed to make sure the truth got out another way. I opened the laptop and copied every file from the hard drive.
Then I created an anonymous email account and began uploading everything: videos, bank statements, contracts, insurance documents, to a dozen random journalists, law firms, and watchdog groups. It took hours. When I hit send, I added one final note. If you receive this, publish everything. My name is Daniel Dawson. My sister Emily didn't die in an accident. Her boyfriend Ryan Carter killed her. He's killed others too. The evidence is attached. I closed the laptop and exhaled. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Even if they caught me, it wouldn't matter anymore. The truth was out. I started the car again and headed north, aiming for the cabin where my parents were hiding. When I pulled up, the air was still, the forest heavy with fog. I stepped out quietly, half expecting to see the SUV waiting, but the driveway was empty. I unlocked the door, whispering, "Mom? Dad?" No answer. The cabin felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. Too quiet. The chairs were overturned, one of the lamps shattered. There was a faint smell of gasoline in the air. Then I saw the note on the table. "You should have walked away." I dropped it, heart pounding, and ran into the bedroom. The floorboard where I'd hidden the original hard drive was torn open, empty, and on the bed, 2 silver necklaces, Emily's and Mom's. I fell to my knees. The world narrowed to a single ringing in my ears. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't think. They'd been here. They'd taken them. Or worse. When I finally stood, something in me broke. The fear burned away, replaced by something colder, sharper. I took the shotgun from the cabin closet, it was Dad's, old, but loaded, and walked out into the fog. I didn't care if I died, I just wanted to end it. Ryan's warehouse was 20 miles away, the same one from the beginning, the one with the silver SUV. I drove there with the headlights off, every mile blurring into the next. When I arrived, the gates were chained, but the side door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of oil and dust. I crept through the shadows, shotgun ready. In the center of the warehouse was a table covered with files, phones, memory cards, evidence of everything he'd done. And at the end of it, facing me, was Ryan. He didn't look surprised. He just smiled. "I figured you'd come." "Where are they?" I said, my voice cracking. He leaned against the table, casual, like we were having coffee. "Safe, for now." Liar. He tilted his head. "You uploaded it, didn't you? All that evidence? You think that matters? You think anyone cares? You can't fight people like me with truth. You fight us with silence. That's how we survive." I raised the gun. "Not anymore." He laughed softly. "You won't do it. You're not like me." I pulled the trigger. The blast echoed through the warehouse. Ryan stumbled back, shock flashing across his face. He hit the ground hard, clutching his side. For a moment, I just stood there, shaking, the smell of gunpowder thick in my nose. Then I walked over and looked down at him. He was still breathing, barely. "Where are they?" I said again. He smiled faintly, blood bubbling on his lips. "Too late." His eyes went still. I dropped the gun and stumbled back, chest heaving. The warehouse was silent except for my ragged breathing. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I grabbed every piece of evidence I could find, drives, papers, phones, and dumped them into my backpack. Then I lit the place on fire. I watched from the road as flames swallowed the building, the orange glow flickering in the fog. Maybe it was over. Maybe it wasn't. When the first sirens appeared on the horizon, I drove away. I didn't go far, just parked by the lake where Emily and I used to fish when we were kids. The sun was rising, painting the water gold. For the first time, I let myself cry. I don't know what happens next. Maybe the files I sent will make it to someone who can finish what I started. Maybe the police will come for me. Maybe none of it matters. But one thing is certain. My sister didn't die for nothing.